What I did was emulate the kind of dress that was worn in the movie.
The annual series of Oz books sputtered to a halt. John R. Neal died in 1943, the year his own Oz story, Scalawagons in Oz, was published, thus bringing to a close a visual continuity in the books that stretched back to L. Frank Baum at the beginning of the century. Others attempted to carry on the tradition. Jack Snow wrote 2 volumes with Frank Kramer as the illustrator, The Magical Mimics in Oz in 1946, and Shaggy Man of Oz in 1949. Then came Rachel Cosgrove, a research biologist by profession, who wrote The Hidden Valley of Oz as her first children's book. It was illustrated by Dirk Gringwe.
I decided I wanted to write an Oz book. And since I'd been working with rats, I decided I wanted a rat in it. Because I worked with rats, and they're intelligent, and the ones I worked with were easy to work with. And I just thought that would be. A lot of people didn't like Percy, they don't like rats, but I liked rats. They wrote back to me from Riley and Lee, and they said they had another manuscript there that had a rocket ship or something. And they decided that it might be better if I changed mine so that this other person whose manuscript they didn't want wouldn't have any squawk. And so I changed it to a flying saucer. And then they wrote back saying, well, maybe they decided that was a little too close still to a rocket ship. And as I had a chapter in about kites, Mrs. Stewart, who was the editor, suggested that I get him there by kite. And I thought that was fine, so that's why I sent Jam to Oz in this collapsible kite that he had built. A lot of people didn't like the illustrations, and they'd say to me, did you like them? And I said, this was my first book. If they had taken that book to the zoo and had a chimpanzee illustrated, I would have liked the pictures.
The 40th book in the Oz canon was written by Eloise Jarvis McGraw and her daughter Lauren McGraw-Wagner. Titled Merry-Go-Round in Oz, it was illustrated by Dick Martin and published in 1963. Thereafter, books about Oz would be published from time to time, most of them through the determined efforts of the International Wizard of Oz Club, founded in 1957 by young collector Justin Schiller. The club still exists, publishing a journal, The Baum Bugle, and sponsoring Oz conventions around the United States. Section. And 42 years after Riley and Lee rejected Rachel Cosgrove's Wicked Witch of Oz manuscript, it was published by the Oz Club in 1992.
As soon as they bought Hidden Valley, I wrote Wicked Witch, and they just turned it down because they said the Oz books weren't selling very well. And 42 years later, the club brought it out. And I didn't let it out of my hands until then. People kept wanting to read it, and I said, no, not until it's a book in print. The club wanted to bring it out serially in their little publication, and I said, no, I want to see it as an Oz book or it stays in my files. I don't think they liked me, but I didn't care. I wanted it as a book, and it was worth waiting for because the illustrations are fabulous. Dorothy's just a little girl. You see, I don't worry about all these psychological things. She was just a little girl in the story, to me. Remember, I started reading Oz when I was young. And when you're a kid, you don't sit around worrying about things like that. You just want to read this good story. And that's what Oz books are for, as far as I'm concerned. They're for kids.